Hello, everyone. Welcome back to On the Fly. Today, we're going to be joined by a very special guest, Mr. Sam Smith himself. Sam is a very good Bruins live streaming, and he likes to commentate on games. So be sure to go check out all his links, his Instagram, his YouTube, and his TikTok. I do believe will all be in the description down below. But today, we do have a very big trade to announce, and we'll let Sam get started here.
So there was a major trade that happened about, 5, 6 o'clock yesterday, local time here for me on the East Coast. So between the Anaheim Ducks and the Boston Bruins, the Anaheim Ducks sent one of their top defensemen, Hampus Lindholm, along with the minor leaguer Cody Curran to the Bruins in exchange for the following: a 2022 first-round pick, a 2023 second-round pick, a 2024 second-round pick, John Moore, and Urho Vaakanainen.
Yeah, so obviously a big-time trade, and with Lindholm retaining 50% salary, which allows Boston to make more than one move at this deadline. I do expect them to go after someone with a little bit higher of a cap hit. Obviously, once they get through this, they sort of equaled out in terms of the cap hit. They have roughly $5 million to spend post-deadline cap. Right now, it's about $1 million, but they don't play till Monday. So because of that, they are going to be able to use that for their next game. So it is interesting to see what else they do. Obviously, their game against the Habs coming up on Monday night. Be sure to check out Sam's channel. He will be also streaming that game. And it is a big-time game. He's also going to be doing trade deadline coverage tomorrow, so be sure to go check that out. As obviously, I'm going to be in school. He gets the day off, so be sure to go check his channel out for full coverage. We'll have a post-recap video coming out later. But obviously, it is a big trade for Boston. And I'm wondering what you think about this trade, because obviously you watch the Bruins more than anyone at this point, string just about every game. What are your thoughts on this deal?
So I will say, because I've been a Bruins fan longer than most of my viewers have been alive, I've been a Bruins fan for 14 seasons, right? This is the best trade under Don Sweeney, there's not much to base that off of, speaking of his history of trades. But he hit the jackpot here with getting Lindholm. I think he is easily the best left-handed defenseman the Bruins have had since Krug or Chara, and so that's a few years. That's good. I like the fact that the Ducks are keeping half their salary. I like the fact that we somehow got rid of John Moore's contract. That's a ha-ha for the Ducks, in my opinion. I don't like to see Vak go. Personally, I liked Vaakanainen's play, but I think he'll do better in Anaheim than he would do here because he wasn't hitting the NHL ice more. He would be stuck in Providence, and I feel like for Lindholm, it's probably for Lindholm's sake, I feel like he has the size and the ability to play with a contender, and I think the Bruins are definitely that, especially if they get if they're not done before tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern when the deadline hits. I feel like they're going to make at least one more move, in my opinion. But I think with that, I think the Bruins did a good job here with this trade, and they gave him. I don't know if we're going to talk about that later. I think I'll be the one to bring it up. They gave him 8 years, 8-year, $52 million contract extension, 6.5 per. I have the breakdown per year if you want me to go through that.
Go for it.
I have to pull it up.
So it's about $6.5 million per year, and what they'll do is they'll stick not as much at the start, and they'll do it in the middle where they're not going to be as good, sort of entering that rebuild phase, and then towards the end is when they really start to shrink it down, roughly $4 million in the final years, and then I think that's going to be really good for Boston, especially because we are going to see that gap year, and most likely 3 to 4 years probably, where they're not going to be as good as they are right now. Bergeron probably going to be retiring. Marchand probably going to be near the end of his contract time with Boston. So I think that sort of years where they let Lindholm get all his money is not a bad idea. And I think when you take a look at most of the Bruins contracts, very similar in terms of even with McAvoy's cap alignment, they did that as well. I think it's going to be interesting to see what goes on during those years if they're going to try and sort of get started again, because they don't have a lot of draft capital right now. They've traded away a lot of their second-round picks. But with that, you might have something else to add. I don't know.
I feel like the history of Don Sweeney in the draft. You talk about the draft and like the draft and stuff like that. His history of draft picks haven't gone too well. So I feel like for them trading the picks they traded, might not be the worst idea in theory. I don't like the fact that he traded a first round, like this year's first round pick, but if it's to get a guy like Lindholm, I guess it's okay. You know what I mean?
Well, even such, I mean, you have Lindholm and McAvoy, who's going to be your top two pairing for what, 8 years now, right? Because both guys signed big contracts.
And Lindholm, I'm looking at his contract breakdown year by year here. So for the first 5 years of his contract, he has a no move clause.
Yeah.
And final 3 years, he's getting paid 4.8, and it's a 15-team no trade clause. So that's very open for the final 3 years of his deal.
And typically 7 of those teams are the Canadian teams, right? So you're really only limited by 8 because players don't want to go to Canada for all the taxes and all the other stuff. So typically it's 7 teams of Canada and then 8 other teams, which is typically the bottom feeders. I'm curious to see where Lindholm, if he does remain in Boston for the rest of his time. Obviously, they have him locked up for a long time. And I think at this point, we take a look at what Boston really spent. 2022 first round pick is going to be a late pick. Obviously, they do expect
bottom half.
Yeah, they do expect to make a deep playoff run this year. Whether or not they do so, obviously we do hope so. But it's not the end of the world if they don't, right? You're looking at maybe especially with the league the way it works, you're looking at maybe a top 20 pick, 20, 21, 22. Because the truth is, you got the Lightning, Florida, the Leafs, all who's going to be.
No, I wouldn't throw the Leafs in there.
They made some big moves today as well, so they're not looking half bad.
They got Giordano and Blackwell, but I feel like their goaltending is going to be their Achilles heel.
It tends to be, right. I mean, you look at past years, they had Anderson, who kind of kept them in throughout most of the playoffs, and then Game 7 he sort of loses it.
Right.
Same with Campbell. Campbell was solid for most of the time, just lacked that defensive effort. But I'm curious to see what goes on with the Leafs, because they are obviously a punching bag that just hasn't quite been able to punch through yet. And especially with Florida making some big moves as well. I look forward to seeing what they're able to do against probably the second or first wild card, because they also have the Hurricanes right now, who are also making some big strides. But I think for Boston, just trying to be contending in a really high competing East Division, conference rather, is important, because when you take a look at it, this is probably going to be their last few years. Every other team is just getting younger and better, where Boston's starting to age out. They're starting to get a little bit worse per year. 2019 was probably their best year, at least their most competitive year that we've seen in a long time. And I think this, especially with the deal for Lindholm, they address sort of that need for a top 4 defenseman. And I think it really is a good trade, especially 50%. We can see that they are going to be able to do some more. Look for that sort of center role. I was hoping Krejci would come back, but Sweeney just announced that he will not be coming back.
It would be an absolute pain to get him back, because he'd have to go through waivers, and he would never clear waivers. Some team would scoop him up just to make sure the Bruins don't get him.
Yeah. So and then they ask for a trade back for him, but I don't know if they do that or not. Obviously,
he'd have to clear waivers again. He'd have to clear waivers again for that to happen. So yeah, exactly. No, it would just be too much of a waste. Wait until the offseason if you're going to get him back at all.
Exactly, and I don't suspect he will. I expect him to probably retire out in the Czech Republic, as he's pretty much announced that he doesn't want to come back to North America and go through that whole cycle again. He wants to stay in his hometown, but it's going to be interesting to see what goes on there. And for that, let's talk about the Lindholm extension, $6.5 million per year. What are your thoughts on that one?
So I'm looking at the breakdown year by year, but that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the actual commitment. It's an 8-year extension that goes until 2030, right? You got to think that is a huge commitment for a guy who hasn't even played a game on the ice yet. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I understand why they signed it. I understand why. It's simply because, you want to make sure this trade is worthwhile. You don't want to trade 2 second rounds of first, a future's top defenseman, and a crappy contract for this top defenseman and just have him walk in free agency. Like, you want to make sure he's locked up. I would have even taken like a 3 or 4 year deal. The fact he's locked up for 8 years is great.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the player you're getting with Hampus Lindholm is a
Right.
leader guy. He's going to bring that leadership. He was an assistant captain, and I do expect him to do a lot of the same. When you take a look at sort of the veteran core of the Boston Bruins, you have a lot of guys that are starting to age out, yes, but you also look for that leadership role with the veteran guys. And I think when you take a look at teams around the league, yes, they are getting younger, but no, they are getting a little bit less experienced. You don't have that veteran guy you can rely upon who's played
Right.
in all those big games. And when you take a look at Boston, any kind of leadership you can find, and you can look at Taylor Hall, when you take a look at the quote unquote bad behavioral in the locker room, I think it's a big time benefit to have players that can help get people back on their way and becoming that big time player within an organization.
Yeah, and the Bruins have a ton of those. You got, let me just name a few off my head. Bergeron, Marchand, they even throw Foligno in there. He's been in the league for a long time. He may not be producing, but he's definitely a big piece of that locker room, which is why I'm happy he's here for that reason. I like his production, but that's a different story. And you've also got a couple other guys who are the leaders. I didn't even consider Pastrnak a leader at this point. He's been here for his 7th season in the NHL. Mm-hmm. I'd throw McAvoy even in there. He's young, but he's your top defenseman. He better be some sort of leader,
Yeah, for sure. And then we're going to be doing a channel specialty here. I'm going to let you do the honors today, and we are going to grade the trade. So for the Boston Bruins, what would you give them?
For the Bruins, I'd give them a B.
I agree. I'd put them at a B.
Very solid. And you got this guy named Cody Curran, who's another defenseman out of the Ducks organization. Spent some time in the San Diego Gulls. He went to the University of Calgary. He played for the Hartford Wolfpack. He's had some time in the minor leagues, and I think if he comes to a organization like the Bruins, he goes to Providence, does his pays his dues. He could be if he proves that he deserves to be here. He could be on the team in the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's not a bad thing to get another defenseman.
Right. And then for the Anaheim Ducks, what would you put their grade at?
I think it's an even trade. They're going to get a B2 because they got a lot back in return. They got 3 picks, including a first-round pick in this year's draft. They got a two-way prospect in Vaakanainen, and they got a leader in Moore. So
yeah, for sure,
Moore's not the best, but it's definitely good to have some leadership, whether he's in San Diego or in Anaheim. I don't care. I feel like the Ducks really did well here, and they've done really well at this deadline. They've already gotten a lot of different players, a lot of different picks, with the trades of Manson, Delorier, and now Lindholm.
And don't forget, they also have Rickard Rakell on the block right now. I do expect him to go come Monday's deadline. I am looking forward to seeing that. But I do expect Rakell at this point to be out as well. They have a lot of players ending that unrestricted free agency, and that's sort of one of the main reasons why they've been dishing out. And I am looking forward to seeing what else they do, because the thing with the Ducks is that they have a lot of cap room now to meander their way through some bad contracts. And I think when you take a look at this 50% that they keep retaining, it's not the end of the world. They get second-round picks pretty much for those bad contracts they originally made.
Right.
And just even retaining a guy like Lindholm. The thing that they said was basically to pick up a guy like John Moore costs a second-round pick. To pick up a guy like Lindholm, former Bruins legend, but Hampus Lindholm, for a second-round pick, he was also worth that. And so when we take a look at it, really, Hampus Lindholm was a first-round pick and a prospect, right? So the first round in Vaakanainen, and then the rest of the cap. So they benefit off that. They get 2 second-round picks for having cap room available. And I think when you really take a look at that deeper, it's a great thing to have for the Anaheim Ducks. And looking forward to seeing what else they sort of capitalize on it with come Monday's trade deadline.
Yeah, and Anaheim, I'd expect, like you said, Rakell to go. Bruins fans, he's not coming to Boston. No, he's not coming here. We don't need that right now. I feel like I'm going to ask this question to you, and I'm going to answer it first before I let you have it. But where will Rickard Rakell end up? Because there's many different teams that could use a right winger right now with injuries or whatnot. I feel like he could do well in Minnesota.
Yeah, so I'll be honest in saying I don't know. Like, I know I just said that he's most likely to be moved, but in my opinion, the reason why they're getting rid of all these players like Manson and Lindholm is to keep Rickard Rakell. And I think in the long run, Rakell made the most sense to keep. But I don't know for sure whether or not they'll keep him. It makes sense to trade him if they don't think they can keep him. But at the same time, I think Rakell out of the three players has the best shot to remain an Anaheim Duck. So I think in the end, he probably will remain an Anaheim Duck, mainly because that's what they've been doing, right? They've been trading players away. But if they do trade him away, they're not getting him back in free agency. So it is going to be interesting to see sort of what goes on there. But at the end of the day, I think when you take a look at a guy like Rickard Rakell, he does provide a lot of value for a lot of teams, sort of that main staple right winger. But at the end of the day, I don't know if a lot of teams are willing to take that risk for a rental guy who really has the choice of where he wants to go in his future. I think if the Ducks hold on to him through the deadline, he'll re-sign in Anaheim. But if they don't, who knows where he goes.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But yeah, so with that, I think we've just about made it all the way through this video. So I'd like to thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you really like this, consider subscribing, tell all your friends, and be sure to check out Sam's channels. Link can be found in the description below. But until next time, see ya.